On recent broadcasts, Frank Sinatra's Ex-Bodyguard has finally exposed the truth we all suspected. He said, "If the public knew half of what I saw, they'd never listen to his music the same way again." But it gets worse. Later in this video, you will find out about the shocking truths revealed by his ex-bodyguard from the 50s, which confirm what we all speculated: Sinatra's ties to the mafia. He wasn't talking about late-night parties or secret affairs. He was talking about mob bosses, whispered threats, and the night Sinatra's entire career was bought with cold steel, not cash. Back in the early 1940s, Sinatra was desperate. Stuck in a contract with bandleader Tommy Dorsey, Frank wanted out. But Dorsey wasn't letting go. He owned Sinatra's future, and he knew it. That's when the mafia stepped in. According to the bodyguard, Sinatra's godfather, the feared New Jersey underboss Willie Moretti, didn't bother negotiating. He walked into Dorsey's office, shoved a gun in his mouth, and offered him $1 to release Frank from his contract. Dorsey signed. End of story. That night changed everything. Sinatra was free, his solo career took off, and the world got its next superstar. But the bodyguard swore Sinatra never forgot the price. From that moment on, he wasn't just an artist. He was a man who owed the mob his life. And, as the bodyguard later admitted, this was only the first secret. Because Sinatra's next job for the mafia wouldn't be in a smoky back office in Jersey. It would take him all the way to Havana, with a suitcase that could have gotten him killed. The bodyguard once hinted that Sinatra's trips weren't always about music. Sometimes the concerts were just the cover. December 1946. Sinatra boards a plane to Havana. Smiling, suit pressed, ready to sing. But his bodyguard claimed Frank was nervous that night. Not because of the crowd, but because of what he was carrying. A simple suitcase, heavy, locked, and whispered about. The official story? Sinatra was booked to perform at a glamorous casino. The real story? He was walking straight into the Havana Conference, a secret meeting of America's most powerful mob bosses: Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Vito Genovese, names that decided who lived, who died, and who controlled entire cities. And right in the middle of them, Frank Sinatra. The bodyguard later admitted, that suitcase wasn't clothes, it was cash. Millions. Money meant for Luciano himself. Some said it held $2 million, stuffed into bundles. Sinatra always swore he didn't know what was inside. But think about it. You don't hand-deliver a locked suitcase to Lucky Luciano in Cuba and not know what you're doing. And this moment didn't stay a rumor. Hollywood turned it into legend. That scene in The Godfather Part 2, the singer in Havana with a suitcase full of mob money, wasn't just fiction. It was inspired by Sinatra's real life. The performance went on. The bosses clapped. Sinatra was safe. But the bodyguard believed this was the night Frank crossed a line he could never come back from. From then on, he wasn't just singing for audiences. He was singing for the mob. And the scariest part? His next role wasn't about music or money. It was about politics, the White House, and a secret affair that still haunts history. The bodyguard once said Sinatra's most dangerous secret wasn't about money, it was about power, political power. By the late 1950s, Frank wasn't just a singer, he was a bridge between the White House and the underworld. According to the bodyguard, Sinatra was the man who introduced two of the most dangerous figures of the era: Sam Giancana, the Chicago mob boss, and John F. Kennedy, the young senator aiming for the presidency. Sinatra wanted to help his friend JFK win the election. Giancana wanted influence in Washington. Sinatra became the middleman. He didn't just shake hands. He delivered favors, arranged meetings, and even introduced Kennedy to Judith Exner, a glamorous woman who happened to be Giancana's girlfriend. Exner later admitted she carried messages between JFK and the mob. And then there was Marilyn Monroe. The bodyguard revealed how Sinatra brought her to his Cal Neva Lodge just days before she was found dead under suspicious circumstances. That weekend, Monroe was seen with both Sinatra and Giancana. According to whispers, she was threatening to go public about her affairs with the Kennedys. The bodyguard said Giancana begged her not to. She left the lodge shaken. A few days later, she was gone. The official story was an accidental overdose, but Sinatra never believed that. Behind closed doors, he told friends she had been silenced, either by the Kennedys or by the mob. The bodyguard said this was the moment Frank realized how deep he was. He could sing for presidents, drink with mobsters, and charm Hollywood. But he was standing in the middle of two worlds that could destroy anyone who crossed them. And the terrifying part? The next time the mob's power touched Sinatra's life, it wasn't about politics or movie stars. It was about family, his own son. The bodyguard once admitted there was only one time he ever saw Frank truly break. And it wasn't on stage. It was the night his son was taken. December 1963. 19-year-old Frank Sinatra Jr. was performing at a casino in Lake Tahoe when two men stormed his dressing room at gunpoint. They tied him up, blindfolded him, and vanished into the night. Within hours, the kidnappers called with their demand: ransom money, or Frank Jr. would never come home. The FBI immediately got involved. They told Sinatra to stay calm, to follow instructions. But according to the bodyguard, Sinatra wasn't calm. He was furious, and he wasn't about to rely only on the government. Behind the scenes, he made another call to the mob. What happened next was pure chaos. Sinatra's underworld friends assumed this was a rival gang making a move. They spread word through every backroom and bar in Nevada, and according to the bodyguard, anyone suspected of knowing something paid the price. Up to 9 people were beaten, tortured, or even killed in the frantic hunt for the boy. The shocking twist? The kidnappers weren't mobsters at all. They were amateurs, a few desperate young men with a half-baked plan. Sinatra Jr. was released unharmed after the ransom was paid. The FBI arrested the culprits within days, but the mob didn't forgive the false alarm. Innocent people had been swept up in their fury. The bodyguard said Sinatra was haunted by it, knowing that the call he made in desperation had triggered a bloodbath he could never take back. And after that night, Frank understood something chilling. The mafia didn't just protect him, they controlled him. They owned him. And Vegas, the city he loved most, was where their grip tightened the hardest. The bodyguard once said, Vegas wasn't Sinatra's playground, it was his prison. Sinatra loved the city. The lights, the casinos, the endless crowds who worshipped him. But behind the glamour, Vegas was run by men far more dangerous than any critic or fan. And Sinatra wasn't just friends with them, he admired them. According to the bodyguard, Sinatra idolized Bugsy Siegel, the notorious gangster who built Las Vegas into a gambling empire. Frank would brag about Bugsy's body count like it was part of his legend. He wasn't scared of him, the bodyguard said. He looked up to him. Vegas made Sinatra powerful, but only because the mob allowed it. He sang at their casinos, dined at their tables, and even performed at mob weddings, like the daughter of Angelo Bruno, Philadelphia's crime boss. To outsiders, it looked like charity. To insiders, it was respect. A singer paying tribute to his true patrons. And the casinos themselves? Many were mob-owned fronts, and Sinatra's presence brought legitimacy. Tourists thought they were buying tickets to see the world's greatest entertainer. In reality, they were filling the mob's pockets. The bodyguard recalled nights when envelopes of cash changed hands backstage, silent payments to keep the machine running. But the loyalty came with chains. The bodyguard said Sinatra once confided, "I can't walk away. They made me. They'll break me if I try." And in Vegas, that wasn't just a figure of speech. Moretti had saved him with a gun. Luciano had trusted him with millions. Giancana had used him as a bridge to the president. By the time Sinatra ruled the Strip, he wasn't just part of the story, he was trapped in it. And if the world ever doubted just how deep those chains ran, the bodyguard's final revelation made it clear. Because according to him, even Sinatra himself once tried to escape by turning to the U.S. government. For decades, Sinatra smiled for cameras, played the role of the untouchable superstar, and denied every rumor about the mafia. But his ex-bodyguard later admitted something that stunned even those who knew Frank well. Behind closed doors, Sinatra wanted out. The bodyguard revealed that in his later years, Sinatra quietly reached out to U.S. intelligence. He was desperate enough to offer something unthinkable: information. Sinatra believed he could feed the CIA details about mob bosses, their movements, even his own private access to powerful figures, including foreign royalty. All he wanted in return was protection, a way out of the life he'd been locked into since Moretti first shoved that gun in Tommy Dorsey's mouth. But according to the bodyguard, the government didn't trust him. They turned him down. Sinatra was too valuable to the mob, too compromised, and too tainted by decades of whispers. He was a man trapped between worlds, too famous to vanish, too connected to break free. The bodyguard's most haunting words came near the end. Frank never truly sang alone. Every time he stepped on stage, the mob was standing there with him. He knew it. I knew it. and it terrified him. To the public, he was the chairman of the board. To the mob, he was family. And to his bodyguard, the man who saw everything, Sinatra was both prisoner and king, a legend who carried secrets darker than any lyric he ever sang. But even with all these revelations, there's still one question no one has ever answered. Did Sinatra control the mob? Or did the mob control Sinatra? The bodyguard once said, "The Rat Pack wasn't just Hollywood's cool kids club, it was the mob's favorite show." On stage, it looked like pure magic. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford. They laughed, drank, and made audiences believe they were watching the ultimate brotherhood. But according to the bodyguard, behind the curtain it was something darker. Because the mob was always there, watching. The casinos where the Rat Pack performed weren't just entertainment venues. They were mob headquarters. Every night, mob bosses sat in the best seats watching Sinatra and his crew like prized possessions. When the drinks flowed and the jokes hit, the gangsters clapped the loudest. To them, the Rat Pack wasn't just a show, it was proof the mob controlled Vegas, Hollywood, and even Washington. But sometimes the danger broke through the glitz. The bodyguard recalled one night when two rival mobsters started arguing backstage during a Rat Pack show. Sinatra had to step in, furious, telling them to shut it down before Dean Martin noticed. Frank knew, the bodyguard said. One wrong word, and the dressing room would have turned into a war zone. And then there was Peter Lawford, JFK's brother-in-law and a Rat Pack regular. The bodyguard hinted that mob bosses hated Lawford, blaming him when Sinatra's friendship with JFK soured. They saw him as weak, disloyal, a liability. Sinatra himself grew cold toward him, reportedly telling his bodyguard, "He's finished." The mob won't forgive him. To the fans, the Rat Pack was glamorous rebellion. To the mob, it was business and influence. The bodyguard swore that every laugh, every toast, every sold-out show was another reminder that Sinatra's fame didn't belong to him alone. And if the mob could plant themselves in Sinatra's shows, they could just as easily plant themselves in his home. The bodyguard once said Sinatra's biggest stage wasn't Vegas or Madison Square Garden. It was the stage inside his own head, a stage built on paranoia. To the world, Sinatra looked untouchable. The suits, the swagger, the voice that never cracked. But behind closed doors, the bodyguard said Frank lived like a man hunted. He kept multiple telephones in his house, each in a different room. He'd whisper on one line, then hang up and finish the conversation on another. He was convinced the FBI was listening, and sometimes he suspected it wasn't just the FBI. He checked shadows before stepping outside. He changed his routes home without warning. And when he was drinking late at night, the bodyguard said Sinatra would lean close and mutter, "They'll never let me go. Not now. Not ever." There were reminders too, little messages that weren't so little. One night, Sinatra found a single bullet dropped into a cocktail glass at his table. Another time, a dead animal was left near his property line. The bodyguard swore these weren't accidents. They were warnings. Not because Sinatra had betrayed anyone, but because the mob wanted him to remember where he stood. And yet, despite all the fear, Sinatra couldn't walk away. Part of him, maybe the darkest part, loved it. He loved the danger, the secrets, the power of being the man who could sing for presidents one night and drink with killers the next. The bodyguard said it was like an addiction. Frank hated the mob, but he also needed them. It was a life of champagne on stage and paranoia in the dark. And even after Sinatra was gone, those fears didn't die with him, because the truth he carried, the lies he lived with, they still echo in redacted files and whispered stories today. And that leads to the final, most haunting chapter, the legacy of silence. The bodyguard once said, "Frank's music will live forever, but so will the lies." When Sinatra died in 1998, the world mourned a legend. The man who sang My Way was remembered as the voice of America, a timeless icon. But buried beneath the tributes were thousands of pages of FBI files, files that painted a very different picture. Over 4 decades, the FBI tracked Sinatra's every move. They documented his friendships with mobsters, his appearances at mafia weddings, his presence at the Havana summit. They even recorded whispers of him acting as a courier, a political fixer, a man tied to gangsters coast to coast. Yet even with all those pages, so much remains blacked out. Names, places, entire paragraphs. Secrets the government decided the public could never see. The bodyguard said that was no accident. Some things, he claimed, were too big to put on paper. He believed Sinatra's true involvement with the mob went beyond anything official files could show. Deals struck in dark corners, messages passed through trusted women, deadly favors no one dared to admit. Even Sinatra's family has acknowledged he had powerful friends. Friends who opened doors and friends who closed mouths. The bodyguard swore that's why so many stories about the Kennedys, about Monroe, about Vegas still end in silence. Because in Sinatra's world, silence was survival. And maybe that's the final legacy. Not just the voice, not just the songs, but the silence. The things never said. The truths buried with him. The bodyguard's words cut sharp. Frank never escaped them. Not in life, not in death. The mob kept him theirs forever. So what do we believe? Was Sinatra a pawn trapped by the mob? A partner who played both sides? Or something even darker? A man who loved the danger so much he never wanted to leave? Frank Sinatra will always be remembered as the golden voice of the 20th century. The man who defined romance, style, and swagger. But as his ex-bodyguard revealed, that wasn't the whole story. Behind the spotlight, Sinatra's career began with a gun to Tommy Dorsey's throat. It rose higher with suitcases of mob money, secret deals with presidents, and nights with Marilyn Monroe that ended in tragedy. His son's kidnapping sparked a mob manhunt that left bodies in its wake. His beloved Vegas stage doubled as a mob boardroom. And even in his final years, Sinatra lived in fear. Terrified of the shadows, but unable to resist them. The FBI files confirm some of it. The bodyguard's whispers reveal more. And together, they paint a picture far darker than the one the public ever saw. Was Sinatra a victim? A pawn trapped by the mafia's grip? Or was he something else? A willing player who thrived on the danger and the power that came with it? The truth may never fully come out, because if there's one lesson from Sinatra's life, it's this: the mob protects its own, and it silences the rest. So the question is yours now. Was Frank Sinatra simply a singer caught in the wrong crowd? Or was the chairman of the board far more connected to America's underworld than we'll ever know? Let me know what you think in the comments.